Valdoria's palace rose like a fortress of night. Black stone drank the dawn. Iron banners hissed in the wind. In the throne hall, torches burned blue, throwing tall, angry shadows. King Althar sat rigid upon his block of obsidian, jaw clenched, knuckles white upon the arms of his chair. The news from the sea had crossed mountains in a single breath. The blockade shaken, ships burned, a dragon alive and unbroken.
I will not tolerate this defiance.
He did not shout. His fury came cold. General Kaelen knelt on the tiled floor, helm under his arm, battle scars bright as silver under torchlight. He had led 100 campaigns and buried the cost of each beneath layers of duty. The king's voice fell like iron.
March. Crush Eldoria before a story becomes a banner. March.
The order was simple. The weight behind it was not. Kaelen bowed his head, oath before breath. He rose and turned, feeling each step as if the tiles themselves judged him. The army rolled from Valdoria like a storm without rain. Standards snapping, drums thundering, ranks in perfect lines. Baggage wagons creaked. Smiths walked beside the iron smell of their carts. Horses tore frost from the fields with their hooves. Snow still clung to the shoulders of distant peaks. Kaelen rode at the column's front, visor up, eyes dark and steady. He counted grain sacks. He counted stairs. He counted the small silences of men who have fought long enough to recognize the shape of a mistake before it is made. They camped by a river choked with ice. A messenger reached him in the night, cloak stiff with cold, bearing a sealed parchment wreathed in wax the color of old blood. The king's hand. No amnesty. No prisoners. No negotiation. Kaelen dismissed the courier and stood alone by the water's edge while the camp slept. Steel had always been simple. This was not. He thought of villages that could not run, of a name that would outlive him like a stain. He closed his eyes and let the river's voice speak the truth he did not yet dare. Eldoria woke under a thin sun clinging to the rim of the world. Nets hung empty, smoke rose from damp wood, and the people moved with the careful steps of those who had survived once and did not trust morning to keep its promise. Elara and Finn returned to the cliff path with the wind in their hair and salt still dried to their skin. Varkor slept folded like a mountain near the edge, his scales dulling in the pale light, his breath a slow fog. The village greeted them with relief that tasted almost like grief. Children reached for Elara's hands. Fishermen clapped Finn's shoulders and looked away from his eyes. The note he had brought, "Your traitor wears honest eyes," seemed to whisper even when no one spoke. Elara kept it in her cloak, as if it might cut her if she loosened her grip. They buried the week's dead quietly. They mended boats without song. They shared bread thin as paper and pretended not to notice. From the high pasture, a shepherd's horn sent a warning down the valley. Dust plume on the northern road. Not a cloud, an army. Across the border plain, Kaelen's banners stabbed the sky. The army spilled over the ridges in disciplined waves, ranks ordered by years of habit. Scouts swept ahead like crows. The first sight of Eldoria, stone cottages, a narrow hall, fields struggling back from winter, looked less like an enemy and more like a place that remembered rain. Drums called the battalions to a halt upon a ridge of scrub and shale. Kaelen watched the valley through his spyglass and found no walls, no towers, no satisfaction in the ease of it. He lowered the glass and closed his fist until the leather creaked. A captain rode up with a king's sealed edict in his saddlebag, ready to speak the words again if the general had forgotten. He had not. "Form lines," Kaelen said at last. Steel whispered as it left scabbards. Standards dipped. Then he added words his voice had not planned. "And wait." The captain blinked. Orders carried across the company like a strange wind.
Hold! Hold!
The army steadied on its heels and listened to its own breathing. Time lengthened. Elara rode out alone beyond bowshot, cloak snapping, ember blade sheathed at her hip. She stopped on the scrub plain where both sides could see her and raised her hand, palm open, to a man she did not know. General Kaelen descended the ridge at a measured pace, banners behind him like rivers of color. He halted 10 horse lengths away. For a long moment there was only wind and the restless shuffling of cavalry mounts. He studied Elara's face and found no arrogance there, only a resolve as bright as the steel she wore. She studied him and found no hunger, only the armor of a man who preferred orders to the sound of his own heart and was failing at the preference today. Few words passed. "Spare us this," she said, not as a plea, not as a dare, but as if naming something already true. His jaw set. "I am bound," he answered, and in that honest sentence she heard the fracture line. A shadow crossed the sun, the shape of a dragon somewhere high, far enough to be rumor, near enough to be weight. An arrow hissed. It thunked into the soil between them, feathered black, fletched with dye the color of old moss. Not a soldier's shot. Too clean, too quiet. Both heads turned at once. On Kaelen's ridge, a figure had raised a second bow from within the press of men. The general's hand moved before his mind did. His sword flashed. A snap of command cracked the air, and the archer went down under the boots of the nearest file. Kaelen's eyes returned to Elara's soul. Something unspoken passed between them that had nothing to do with flags. He lifted a hand and signaled his standard bearers. The banners dipped once, twice, and then the great companies began to peel away, not in flight, not in surrender, but into the measured geometry of an encampment. Tents rose like a second town. Fires remained unlit. Siege engines stayed hooded. The army sat down upon the earth and pretended to think. Kaelen turned his horse. As he wheeled, a small object left his gauntlet and dropped into the scrub between them, lost to any eyes except the ones that had been waiting. He did not look back. Elara dismounted and found it. A coin shaved thin, stamped with the crest of Valdoria, its edges nicked in a soldier's code to mark the hours of a clock. A single notch at dawn, another at dusk. A message without ink. You have today, perhaps tonight. She slipped the coin into her glove and rode home without triumph. The camp held. Kaelen sat in his command tent with maps spread like old scars and the king's edict heavy on the table. His captains argued for momentum. His quartermaster fretted about ration lines. His scouts reported the rumor of wings in the cloud seam, the glow of something that could be sunrise and was not. A stranger came into the circle of lamplight and stood as if invited. He wore leather without mark, a hood without dust, a face built for disappearing. Kaelen's hand hovered near the hilt he had not drawn at parley. "I serve the crown," the stranger said. His voice did not announce a name. The king wonders why the sky over Eldoria remains untroubled by ash. Kaelen dismissed his officers with a glance and watched the man watch him. The stranger's smile had no heat. "Delay," the man said, "is a kind of treason that smells like rain, soft at first, then everywhere." When the tent was quiet again, Kaelen took up the king's parchment and fed it to the lamp flame, one edge at a time, holding it long enough to memorize the shapes of letters dissolving into smoke. He ground the ash with his thumb until it disappeared into the weave of the rug. Outside, a low roar gathered and faded, the sound of a great beast folding itself back into patience. In Eldoria's hall, the elders spoke too quickly. Names were offered to the fire in their throats. A miller with a clear gaze, a healer with steady hands, honest eyes. The note inside Elara's cloak seemed to burn against her ribs. Finn stood apart, listening to the music of fear and recognizing each note. He had played these halls once, the soft larcenies of trust and doubt. His gaze caught a corner shadow moving when it should not. His fingers found the nicked edge of a windowsill where a watcher had rested too often. He followed the trail to a threshold and found only air and a fragment of green wax crushed beneath a heel. He brought it to Elara's palm, emerald, not moss. A memory of Nyla's ring in another room, another light. The net was larger than any of them wanted. Varkor shifted his weight outside the hall, and the beams creaked. Elara breathed, and the room remembered how to be still.
We hold,
She said simply. The village obeyed because sometimes the right orders are also the smallest. Night slid over both camps like ink. In the Valdorian lines, songs rose softly and died before the second verse. In Eldoria, the children slept without dreaming, and their mothers sat up and watched the doorways until their eyes stung.
Do you think she can really help us?
I just don't know what to believe.
On the ridge, Kaelen stood coatless in the cold and listened for the lie that would let him live with the truth. He had told a runner to ride at dawn with a report that the bridges were washed out and the wagons mired. He had told his captains they would drill at first light. He had told himself that bravery wears many faces, and sometimes the bravest thing a sword can do is stay inside its scabbard. He could feel the king's fury walking toward him from a distance, patient and sure-footed. He closed his eyes and made a small vow into the dark, not to a god, to a line he would not cross, to a village he had not yet harmed, to a boy he had once been before the first oath unstitched him. At dawn, the mist lifted from the valley and revealed the same two worlds it had hidden at dusk. Eldoria's roofs held the dew. Kaelen's camp held its discipline. The dragon drew a long breath somewhere above the clouds and let it go without fire. A rider reached Valdoria's gate by noon with a report that lacked heat and contained too much road. In the Blackstone Hall, King Althar read the distance between the lines and smiled without light. Replace him, he said, to no one and to everyone, and send someone who enjoys the taste of smoke. Far to the south, on a sunlit balcony, Empress Nyla received word that Valdoria's fist had curled. She set a goblet down and did not look at the sea. Good, she said, and the green stone at her finger watched the light.
Victory.
On the Eldorian cliffs, Elara stood with Finn at her shoulder and Varkor at her back. She opened her hand and looked at the thin coin with the dawn notch and the dusk notch and the space between them where a man had tried to live. They would not trust him. They could not rely upon him. And yet, the plain was quiet because he had simply not spoken a single word that would have ruined them. Sometimes, mercy wore an enemy's colors. Elara tucked the coin into her bracer and faced the day that would not promise anything. They had not been spared, not yet, but they had been given a breath. For now, it was enough. Thank you for watching. I'm just a hard-working YouTuber, trying my best to bring you interesting stories. I will greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. It means the world to me. Thank you once again.